Hello again, everybody. We're back for our latest episode of Boardroom RevOps, where we're bringing you valuable tips from RevOps experts so you can make it to the C-suite. I'm James, the co-founder of Account Aim, the RevOps BI platform. A little bit of a unique episode today. I have Casey here joining me. He's the head of RevOps at Minitab. He has both a sad and fascinating career story to share. It's going to be a little bit more personal of an episode, a little bit more reflective, but I also think it has a lot of really interesting connections to RevOps, the value of RevOps, and why you might want to stick with it. Casey, thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, James. Appreciate it.
Why don't we kind of dive right in? Usually I ask folks to share their background like fairly quickly, but I think, the root of what we're going to talk about today is based on like your life experiences. So maybe start with the basics, kind of like, what you're doing today, but then share more about kind of like your career arc and we can dive in from there.
Yeah, for sure. So currently I lead RevOps, as you mentioned, at Minitab. More specifically, it's sales operations, and but it's in finance. We have a team of 13 of us globally. It's a 53-year-old software company, which is pretty wild. Statistical analysis software company, kind of came out of academia, but we sell primarily to manufacturing companies, quality control. So a lot of statistical analysis on the variation in manufactured products.
And tell me how you got there. You have like a long career arc, ended up running the family business, took some sojourns from there. Yeah, give me the story.
Yeah. So definitely an unconventional background, and I think probably while unconventional, I think a lot of folks that find themselves in RevOps probably also have unconventional backgrounds. But yeah, I'll start kind of at the beginning of my career. So graduated from a small liberal arts school called Juniata College in Central PA. I had a job offer that fell through like 2 days before I graduated, so I ended up joining the family business. My dad started an industrial construction company back in 1996. So it was about 15-year-old company when I joined, and I joined starting a grassroots marketing campaign for a product we were going to distribute out of a Norwegian company. So, a small company, we're probably 20 people at the time, primarily, I say industrial construction. So think mechanical installation and manufacturing facilities, fabrication, things like stairwells and catwalks, platforms, big metal stuff. And so, reporting to my father, owner, founder of the company, I was afforded the opportunity to learn a lot. Kind of became jack of all trades, focused on primarily sales, estimating, some design work, but also got involved in some marketing, wrote the HR manual, things like that. So kind of became a jack of all trades, but really with a lean into sales. Little did I know that sort of jack of all trades was kind of setting me up for 3 years later in 2014, almost exactly 3 years after I started the company. My father passed away suddenly in an ATV accident. Um, so yeah, small family business, had no succession planning. My mom and my dad started in their garage, when I was 7 years old. Through the process of kind of growing up in the business, I had seen all the challenges, from everything from leadership to lack of process to a lot of things happening manually. So anyway, when I stepped up as CEO of the company, we were a consulting firm, and they did a disc profile analysis of like 13 folks, management primarily. And through the consultants evaluation, the opportunity to step up as CEO, and it was a pretty intense ride over the next 3.5, 4 years while I was CEO. So I was 25 years old. I just met my now wife, and my father had just passed. But yeah, so over the next like 6 or 12 months, replaced two of the three vice presidents, hired a CFO, hired a COO. We'd also implemented a third division, so we were mechanical and fabrication. We also added on electrical division as well. So from 2013, a few months before my dad passed away, to 2018, my last year, we went from about 3.5 million in revenue and 20 employees to about $10 million in revenue and 50 employees.
That's crazy, given you said it was what, 15 years to get to 3 million in revenue?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really intense growth, and it sounds certainly glamorous growth, basically tripling in size, but it was really hardcore, especially for a young man who's mid 20s that just lost his father. So as much as you'd love to say, it was all glitz and glamour, it was pretty intense. But yeah, implemented a lot of processes, implemented some software, focused really on leadership and people. Being in your mid 20s in the trades, I was working with a lot of folks in their 50s and 60s that had been in the trades for decades. So I just didn't have the type of experience that they had in the industry. My experience is more on the people and the processes. Because, while experience definitely helps with those things, it's more about just figuring out the best way to do things and getting buy-in and implementing change. So yeah, from there, my wife and I got married in 2017. Basically, in our honeymoon, decided, this is an awesome learning opportunity, but I'm done. I was totally burnt out. Probably put on 40 or 50 pounds at that point. And also there's, in family business. Hats off to anyone in family business. It's tough working with family. So transitioned out of my role over the next 6, 7 months. My wife and I went to New Zealand for about 5 weeks, and then got home, packed up our stuff, and moved to Colorado. And that's really where my career really began at that point. Of course, not to diminish being a CEO, but it's a pretty unconventional start in your mid 20s. Amazing learning opportunity, more about me as a person and leader than it was really probably construction, which wasn't my main interest. From there, I got involved in a few things, got involved in commercial real estate. Eventually found myself working for LexisNexis, built two sales teams focused on the western side of the US for them, about 30 AEs. I joined a few startups after that. And then my wife and I are looking to start a family, so moved back to Pennsylvania. We're now in State College, Pennsylvania. But as in the midst of moving, had a very introspective time where I was trying to figure out, I'd done a lot of things, primarily sales. Even when I was CEO, I was doing a lot of sale, like the larger deals. Um, but really just focused on what is it that makes me fulfilled. Because frankly, I was unhappy. I like sales, but also it wasn't very fulfilling for me. It wasn't gratifying. Making money is great, and selling big deals is fun and exciting. Um, but the work as a whole just really wasn't truly fulfilling for me. So we were on vacation about a month or two before we moved back to Pennsylvania, and I had reflected on all kinds of personality profiles. I'd taken like Myers-Briggs, PXT, Enneagram, DISC, and probably a couple others through Strength Finders through the years. And Strength Finders in particular kind of caught my attention as I was looking back at that profile. Analytical was my first. I don't know if you were taking. Have you taken Strength Finders before?
I haven't, but I've heard great things about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like 34, 35 characteristics. And the idea is you lean into your strengths. Everyone has weaknesses, everyone has strengths. But instead of trying to improve your strengths, you lean into instead of leaning into, focusing on improving your weaknesses, you lean into your strengths. So being analytical is my number one. I was like, man, I know a lot of salespeople that are really good salespeople. I would not call them analytical. So anyway, I got to really thinking about it, and then I saw this thing called sales ops, and I had, of course, worked with some sales ops folks in my software career. Um, but I read a job description. I was like, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's more of a business agnostic with a lean into sales, very analytical thinking. So I just got to thinking about that. And then when my wife and I moved back to Pennsylvania, I quit my job. I was head of sales and CS at a startup at the time. Quit my job, and then I said, what, I'm gonna find a job in sales ops. So moved to Pennsylvania, took a very cathartic 6 months off, and really took my time finding the right company, the right manager, and the right role. And ultimately, through that, found Minitab, which is serendipitously headquartered here in State College. So I'm sure that helped me get the job as I was pivoting from sales to sales ops also. But yeah, I've really found the pivot to be fulfilling, and I'm really, really happy with the change in path.
That's great. I want to unpack a lot in there, but start by saying that I loved our initial conversations and why I thought it'd be so great to bring you on Boardroom RevOps because you've had such an introspective journey and it's almost like inverted. You started as a CEO at the kind of basically the beginning of your career when I think so many folks, and even how we frame up like the goal of this podcast is like how to make it to VP, what do you do beyond VP?
Mm.
And, more and more we talk to people who have kind of like, made it to the top, or in your case, started at the top and actually realize it's not what they want deep down. Like just the title, just the money, as you mentioned, being an AE is like not what's most important in life for everyone. And so I think it's amazing that you have the ability to like really think about that. And so we'll cover that a little bit more, but really appreciate you sharing the background. You mentioned a few things I wanted to get into, and maybe to start with some of like the tactical. You kind of brushed over how much you grew the family business when you came in. I think it's like an incredible feat. It must have been incredibly challenging. You mentioned it was really stressful, but to me it sounds like it was RevOps, even if you didn't know the name of the job at the time, that took the company to the next level. And so as people are thinking about other careers, there's search funds out there, people buying their own small businesses. Like, how do you think RevOps applies to like a smaller, more traditional business rather than the world of VC-backed startups that so many folks in RevOps are in?
Yeah, really good question, and I agree. I don't think I definitely didn't realize at the time. At the time, I don't even know if RevOps was even a term that was used. Um, yeah, so I'll give you a very brief story. When I started in the company, there was a job log. So behind our secretary's desk, there was a binder, paper binder. And anytime one of our sales guys or VPs would go out and talk to a customer, they'd get back from their sales call and they'd go physically write the job number in this binder and the customer's name and the date and so forth. Um, and it just speaks towards like how manual everything was and frankly still is in number of industries, but
Hmm.
construction definitely no exception. So one of the things I had done was instead of that job log being in a binder, put that in the cloud. So I used Smartsheet. Um, and then from there, that list became also a place where we could house our estimates. So when you in construction, you estimate number of man hours, materials, all those things. So then it became all of our estimates in a folder, and then all of those summarized the list of jobs within all the customers. And I basically built out from there and kind of built I'll use this lightly. It really wasn't a CRM, but basically a light CRM in Smartsheet custom built for construction where it housed all of our jobs, the estimates, and then eventually turned that into kind of a location for us to run our sales calls. So we'd have weekly pipeline calls that I implemented specifically around the job logs. So we had reporting, looking at all those estimates, aggregating all the information that showed number of hours, expected gross margin, materials cost, which divisions were involved, the salesperson involved, and so forth. So basically, it was a centralized location that used to be just in a binder in someone's desk, was now kind of became our way of operating. Which was, yeah, kind of profound in hindsight. At the time, it just seemed like a natural thing to do. But definitely, I agree. It definitely is implementing RevOps. But yeah, didn't know at the time.
How do you think that helped you unlock all of that growth? Were you guys just getting the visibility you didn't have before, like able to spot, opportunity leaking through the pipeline or things like that, or was it something else?
Yeah, yeah, definitely standardized. I mean, kind of speaking towards your question about RevOps and other companies. It standardized things. So we were all looking at the same location. In fact, in an industry where is generally resistant to change, it was kind of cool because you go into anyone's office and that list would be up on their screen of all the job
Mm.
logs or an estimate they were working on. And so this became like the source of truth for everything that we did. And yeah, so it became a common operating language, became a standard way of working. If there was improvement to be made that someone caught, I'd go and kind of adjust it, and we'd all see the benefits and talk about it. So I think just like standardization, which I think kind of speaks towards RevOps, right? Like standardizing the way the company operates.
For sure, man. I shouldn't brainstorm on the call, but you make me want to like start a VC fund or something and then go invest in RevOps operators to go, buy these smaller businesses. But anyway, we won't go down that hypothetical rabbit hole. How about getting buy-in? You mentioned it's like an older industry. You had some like probably lifers in the company, or at least folks who've been around the industry for a long time that are used to these procedures. You were the young upstart, the founder's kid, which I'm sure had its own challenges
Yeah.
too. Like, tell me about getting the buy-in.
Yeah. So I will say, I mentioned turning over 2 to 3 VPs, having people that look at you differently. Obviously, there's bias, right? Everyone has bias. So not to diminish that reality. It also kind of fleshes people out pretty quickly, though, because if people have some intense stereotype, and I may not have had the experience in the industry, but I am a good person, and was a good leader that really genuinely cared about people. So if they harbored some resentment towards me or the company, it kind of was indicative more of what they had going on than the company. So
Sure.
it was kind of like a lens that I intentionally used. Um, and then as far as like getting buy-in for change, I think from like a leadership style is very like the democratic kind of leader. Very much so seeking out others' opinions, probably to a fault. Actually, was probably more, if anything, a weakness. Instead of just making a decision, moving on. But that did help me get the buy-in. So I think I often had buy-in, and or enough buy-in with enough people that I had the confidence to go make a decision. As far as like, managing people 20, 30, 40 years your senior, that was definitely an experience at 25 years old. Selfishly, I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. I got so much experience at such a young age, just learning from all these veterans, albeit a different industry. It was pretty cool. I learned how to work. I'll tell you, that's a unique industry. So I think leading by example, step in the trenches and just really working hard around these people that has just been, working 60, 70-hour weeks pretty much their whole lives.
Wow, that's awesome. Great reflections on that for sure. You also mentioned you said you did multiple personalities assessments. You really like strength finders. I mentioned how interesting it is to me that you've, been at the top and now are very happy in RevOps. We had someone else on the podcast who became CRO effectively and decided they wanted to come back to RevOps. Like, with all the context you have around your thought around personality and those assessments, like, I think you mentioned a little bit why RevOps is right for you on the analytical side, but like, what kind of people do you think should consider like sticking in RevOps for the long term versus trying
Mm.
to find that, next pinnacle to hit?
Yeah, well, I'll start with for me. I went into RevOps because it just seemed like I need like intellectual challenges to be happy. I mean, put simply, in life or business. And it just seems like we solve really, really tough problems in RevOps. So I think if people are passionate and really enjoy solving tough business problems, RevOps affords that opportunity. Now, as you well know, and probably everyone listening to this, there's like RevOps such a broad-reaching like umbrella term for so many things. Um, that including in my career path with even within Minitab, in the last 4 years, you kind of have to find your own footing within RevOps to figure out what's most fulfilling in RevOps.
Mm.
But if you like intellectual challenges in business or just business in general, or some aspect that RevOps touches, like sales or operations or product, even, RevOps may very well be a pathway into that. But you have to really kind of figure out what it is that's fulfilling once you're on that path, and yeah, start manifesting as best you can once you're on that path.
100%. I think what you work on in career trajectory is so in the hands of RevOps folks more than other industries, which is a blessing and a curse.
Mhm.
It is really challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, well said.
Let's fast forward to today. From our past conversations, like it sounds like you've really excelled in your current role. You wouldn't be the head of RevOps and have progressed to that point if that weren't the case. I think if memory serves, you have a team of 10, maybe 12. You feel like you're making a real impact, which is not always the case for many folks in RevOps. They feel like they've been diminished to an admin role. How'd you do it? Because I don't think you started with this big team and this big impact. Probably like what was your experience? Like, what are the most important ways a RevOps leader can kind of differentiate themselves or add value?
Yeah, yeah. So similar to my career, Minitab is an unconventional sort of story as well. So again, 53-year-old software company. I'll save the details, but really our current CEO and CRO have basically built the go-to-market from ground up in the last 6 years. We didn't even have commissions or a true sales org until 6 or 7 years ago when they started in the
Only
business.
took 46 years, huh?
Yeah, so we've basically tripled in size over that time frame, which is pretty remarkable what they've accomplished, or what we as a company have accomplished. So with that being said, not having a sales organization, a true sales organization, sales ops, rev ops, we've really been kind of like lagging behind the sales org. So when I came, I think it's probably one reason I was afforded the opportunity to take on this role is probably my team building and kind of visionary sort of skill sets and experience. So yeah, when I started, I think we had 4 people on the team. Three of which excluding myself, 3 of those 4 turned over in the first 4 months. Self-selected, but I'm happy. I don't think it was a fit for them with where we're taking the team. So at this point, only me and one others are here from when I started in September 2022, and now we have a team of 13. So it's been a pretty intense scale up within RevOps. So now we have, for context, we have commissions, analytics. We do kind of ad hoc project management. We have a CRM architect, like a staff position on our team. Day-to-day operational support for the sales organization. We have sales administration on the team and channel operations as well. I used to have enablement that now resides in L&D. And then as far as like the work that I do, it's a lot of budgeting, sales forecasting, planning, all of those types of things. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I found it most fulfilling here in the tail. Now that I have a team really built, it's afforded me the opportunity to act in more of an advisory capacity to our CFO and CRO and the head of finance. But it's because of advocating for resources, because of kind of going back to what I said earlier about putting the work in. I think I earned a lot of credibility quickly because it wouldn't be uncommon to be in the office at 4 or 5, 6 in the morning, and going home late at night. So, but it was out of necessity. We just didn't have the team in place. So, putting the work in, showing that I care, was passionate, and leading by example, and then frankly, my whole team had, that those hours were pretty extreme in the front end, but my whole team is really, really extraordinary. Everyone on my team has stepped up tremendously. So everyone is like a force multiplier. Everyone's super engaged and like a force multiplier of the team. So we have a very high performing team, which affords me the opportunity to focus on more strategic initiatives and at that advisory capacity. So if you don't have a team, if you don't have a team that allows you to do that, it's probably virtually impossible to get there because the day to day just eats your lunch.
Yeah, how did you make that argument to get more resources? Like so often folks are told, RevOps isn't revenue generating, which I disagree with. It, might be indirectly revenue generating, but I believe it is revenue generating. Sounds like showing how hard you were working was one part of this, but there's presumably more to making that argument, right?
Yeah. There's a lot, and even now, I would say we could double the size of our team and not keep not not keep up, right? So I think that's an important thing to acknowledge because always advocating for resources, and RevOps probably isn't unique in that circumstance. Yeah, I think that for example, I'll give you one example. Our channel operations was a huge necessity. We do a pretty large amount of business through our indirect channel, but did not have any kind of dedicated operations. So we didn't have any hard and fast, like admittedly, no hard and fast like ROI or anything like that.
Mhm.
But there were day-to-day challenges coming up with partners and internally that it was like very, very, very evident that we needed a dedicated resource for channel operations. So build out the job description. We actually had an intern in a part-time slash intern doing it to kind of show some of the value, and then we implemented a PRM to support specifically our partners. And in the midst of that implementation, we hired someone full time basically to take that on. So as we adopted a system that would increase the efficiency of our partners and our exchanges with them, our data and communications, we hired someone full time to manage that. So I'm not sure if it answers your question perfectly, but there's a number of like happenstance things like that. Basically, as we matured as a business and as a sales org, we hired people to take on those functions, including
Finding the new
commissions,
bottlenecks.
BI.
Yeah, it kind of feels
Yeah,
like the ROI is kind of self-evident there if that was a huge
yeah,
part of the business and there's all
exactly.
these issues coming up.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're almost at time here. This has been awesome. I think maybe the last question I want to ask you, Casey, is like you've done a lot of things in your career already. Sounds like you're incredibly happy at Minitab with the team and RevOps generally. Like, you're still young. How do you think about your goals and career path from here? Is it RevOps forever? Is it something else in the future? How do you think about this?
Yeah, like you said, I feel very, very fortunate to be in the role I'm in, specifically focused on solving like very interesting strategic problems in the business. And this is kind of what I set out to do when I jumped into RevOps. So yeah, always open to new things. I think for me, someday I think I'd like to maybe put that CEO hat back on. Maybe buy some small businesses. My wife and I long term want to move to Costa Rica. So whatever allows us to do that eventually is probably the ticket. But for the foreseeable future, exercising this strategic advisory and leadership hat is really, really fulfilling. So I think for the foreseeable future, RevOps is where it's at for me.
Awesome. Well, Casey, thanks again. It was a really inspiring conversation. I think a lot of people can just learn from the thoughtfulness and introspection that like you've shared here. So thanks a lot for coming on and being a little bit vulnerable. Appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity, James. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Thanks, Casey.